Hello and welcome to another Caseware webinar. Today we'll be covering top tips on group consolidations. My name is James and I'll be hosting today's webinar alongside Georgie Atfield and Phil Reeves, who will be presenting today. As always, we'll be hosting a live Q&A session today at the end of the session, so please use the Q&A feature shown on the next screen there, Phil. Furthermore, if you have any technical issues, please use the chat feature and I'll respond to you as soon as possible on there. A recording of today's session will be made available on our YouTube channel and also on our knowledge base. We will also be making a handout available after today's session with supporting resources to further your learning. The aforementioned handout will be made available on the knowledge base as well. Finally, we're super excited to be offering a chance to win a 12-month subscription to our group consolidation e-course, and we'll circle back to this at the end of today's webinar. Now to hand over to Phil for the agenda.
I'm on mute still. Thank you, James, for that introduction. And yeah, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. As James has already mentioned, please stay to the end so you can see the details about how you can win that free course. But before that, we've got lots of great group consolidation elements to discuss, some top tips on setting up files, lead schedules, eliminating journals, as you can see on the list. And again, if anyone's got any questions at any point, please feel free to ask, to drop them in the chat field, and we'll be more than happy to, at the end, to have time to answer any questions that we've got. Yeah, so to start with, just to look at some of the setup elements when it comes to a consolidated file. So the different methods that you can use to set up your group entity file. Then obviously look at some specific lead schedules and then look at the accounts themselves. And to do that, I'm going to jump into a caseware file. So I will jump into this one. So today we've got ABC Holdings Limited. And as I say, to start, we're going to just discuss the two main methods that you have for when you're creating the consolidated file. Again, the method that you use will depend on the best circumstance for your company and the consolidated set of entities that you're putting together. If you've got separate caseware files for your subsidiary entities, you can pull that information from the subsidiary caseware file into the parent file. Obviously, that will bring forward the mapping. Any journals that you created in that subsidiary file will be pulled directly into the parent file, thus saving you the time of having to map the information twice, both within the subsidiary and the parent file. Now, if in instances that you don't have a caseware file for the subsidiary, then you can also pull that information directly into the parent file via the means of an import, whether that be from Excel or from a CSV file, or from one of the various accounting softwares that you can import from. Now, just to give you an idea of how that setup works, if I go into the Consolidate window at the top of the screen, you can see here that we've got ABC Holdings Limited at the top. Now, one thing you will need to do, I've already done it in this file, but one thing you will need to do when you're setting up the consolidation is just access the parent file at the top, or the parent entity that's listed at the top. Go to properties and just give it an abbreviation. Now we're going to circle back to this point when we go through and look at the lead schedules, but we need to make sure that we've got an abbreviation in there for the lead schedule element, the consolidated lead schedules, to work properly. So please make sure that you provide just an abbreviation, again, just by going to the properties option on the right hand side. Now, for those of you that haven't seen this screen before, the consolidated window is essentially where we add in all the subsidiary entities that make up the group file. The top level, that ABC Holdings Limited, will be our parent company. So your parent file also acts as the group file when you're going through the process of creating those consolidated accounts. Now, on the right hand side, we've got some options. OK will allow us to save any changes that we've made. We've got Apply, which will apply any consolidations that we're doing. We've got Consolidate All, which will consolidate all the entities that we've added to our consolidation tree. Cancel will cancel any changes. Properties we briefly jumped into, but again, we'll jump back into in a minute when we're creating a new entity via the new button. And we can also delete subsidiaries via the delete button. And again, if anyone's unsure at any point, the help option will take you to Case for International's help page for the consolidation window. Now, to create a new subsidiary linking to another caseware file, or if we're using the other method of importing, we always just start by going to the new option here. Selecting new, we can give our subsidiary a name. Obviously, the name of the subsidiary in this case is going to be ABC Exhibitions Limited. That will automatically populate an abbreviation. Now, again, it is important that that abbreviation is included. Again, as I mentioned previously, when we go back to the lead schedules. Now, the difference when it comes to whether we're going to pull that information from another caseware file or import it comes from this external source option for entity details. Now, you can see by default it's selected as none, but we have the option to select an existing file, which if I select this, I can then browse to the caseware file that I would like to pull this information from, which in this case, I'll just move this over so you haven't got to go through all the paths. So I'm going to use but we've got in here a ABC Exhibitions Limited file, double click, and then we just select the caseware file. When I select OK, this will activate all of the different options that we've got below, include prior balances. Now, when we first conduct the consolidation, we want to make sure we pull that prior year data into the parent file. But once we've done that first initial consolidation, what we would then want to do is just jump back into these properties and untick that option. Now, the reason we untick it is in the event that we've created any eliminating journals, we just want to make sure that we don't replace that information if we ever need to go, if we go and make a change in that subsidiary file and then we reconsolidate that information, and we don't untick this box, what it's going to do is just going to pull that information again from the subsidiary and remove any eliminations that we've done in relation to the prior year. So after our initial consolidation, we just jump back into this screen and untick this box. Include budget, forecast, custom balances. Again, not options that are widely used, so we will untick those. And then we've got the default ticks on exclude zero balance accounts. So anything that any accounts that are zero within the subsidiary file will be excluded. But again, if you've set some up that you want to include, you just untick the box. Enable account synchronization ensures that any that if we make an adjustment to things like the mapping within the subsidiary file and then we reconsolidate the file, it will just update the mapping within the parent file as well. And also if we were to make any changes to, for example, the names of a nominal code within the subsidiary file, it'll also pull that in by enabling account synchronization. And the final option we've got there is to unmap new external accounts. Again, not something that you're likely to do for a company consolidated file, but for those of you that are using charities, and if the charity has got a subsidiary that is a company, then you may want to unmap the external codes, as the mapping is slightly different for the charity template. But for now, I'm just going to leave these options as they are. Fractional contributions, we leave as 100%. If anyone wants any more details on this screen, then please feel free to drop something in the chat. If I click OK, you can see that load in our subsidiary. Now we get an icon appearing. It looks very similar to the case view icon that you get when you access the accounts, but you also get a warning icon appearing. And the warning icon is telling us that this information is not yet being pulled into the parent file. So we need to go through and we need to consolidate all or select apply on the subsidiary to pull that data into our parent file. So I click apply. If you haven't, if your subsidiary file is compressed, you may get a message at this stage just asking you to uncompress the file. The files must be uncompressed to consolidate into each other. So wait for that to run through. And once that's done, you can see in the screen behind the window that we're looking at over here on the entities column that we've now got, or that we've got, sorry, a new column for entities, ABC Holdings Limited, ABC Exhibitions Limited, and it will list all of the nominal codes. for both entities by default on this screen. Now, the other method of pulling this information in is to go to New, and instead of, and again, we're going to give it a name, but instead of selecting an existing file, we're going to select None. And then what we'll be able to do here is just import that information into the parent file, but then allocate it to ABC Promotions Limited. So again, very straightforward. We'll go through that process in a moment. But if I click OK, what we'll have in the file is our ABC Promotions Limited what we'll have in the file is ABC Holdings Limited, ABC Exhibitions Limited, and ABC Promotions Limited. This drop-down can be used to show just the trial balances for your subsidiary entities. So if I go to ABC Promotions Limited, you can see at this point there is nothing in the file. It is recommended that this is always left when you're opening the accounts at the top level ABC Holdings Limited to make sure we're pulling all the information into the parent file. If I just left it on one of the subsidiaries, when I go into the accounts, it will just pull that subsidiary's information into again to the file. Now, what you want to do, or an alternative to just view one entity's information, is you can click the entity drop down here. If I select it twice and go to the top, you can see I can expand the plus just to show ABC Exhibitions Limited trial balance, for example. Now, in terms of importing, we've got plenty of information on importing, but just to give you an idea of the difference, I'll go to Browse and I will locate a trial balance. I'm just going to import this from Excel, but again, if anyone wants any more details on importing, then please feel free to let us know and we can send over some information. But I just wanted to show you the main difference when you're importing the data into the group file as opposed to into a single entity. Again, we go through, we remove the rows, we then allocate the columns, mapping numbers, current year. Again, I'm just going through this quickly, as I'm sure you've all seen it plenty of times before. We can go to next, and this is the main difference between what you'll see when you go into a single entity and you're importing that data and when you're doing it within a group file. So what you'll see is you've got your nominal codes on the left, and you've got your subsidiaries on the right, and also your parent company. So you can drag and drop them one at a time into the appropriate entity, or if they're all related to a single entity, you can go to the next button, and then you can apply all of those nominal codes to one entity at the same time. So I can go ABC Promotions Limited, and I can click OK. And there we go. So, and then you get through to that advanced specification screen that we've seen, again, very similar to what you would see within the single entity import. So that was setting up the consolidated file. Again, if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat function. Again, the more questions, the better it is for us guys, because we can focus on answering the questions that you guys have on specific areas of the group elements. Now, for the next part, we're going to jump into a file where I've gone through and created some information already. I've imported data. I've already gone through and created some journals. And at this point, we're going to go through just quickly how you can create an eliminating journal. So eliminations, obviously, to remove information from the group data, but without affecting the company information. If I go to the Adjusting Journal Entries button at the top and click New, eliminating journals are simply a different type of journal from what you would usually create on a single entity set of accounts. So instead of normal adjusting, we go down to eliminating journal. So for things like intercompany transactions, you would want to create an eliminating journal. In terms of the layout of the Adjusting Journal Entry screen, the main difference is you've got the entities drop down here. So you can create your journal and relate it to not just the parent company, but also those subsidiaries that we imported the data for. Again, we can then find a nominal code that relates to the information that we're trying to adjust. And then we can insert an amount up here. So just to give you an example of an eliminating journal, we've got this one for intercompany sales, purchases, and sales purchase ledger balances. Now, because this is an eliminating journal, although we've selected ABC Holdings Limited at the top, which is obviously our parent company, this journal will not affect the parent only, the company only figures within the financial statements, because of the fact that it's an eliminating journal. So again, eliminating journals won't affect the company, but will affect the group figures. Again, if anyone wants any more information on eliminating journals, please feel free to drop something in the chat. Now, our next point we're going to look at is the lead schedules. Sorry, just had a little flicker of the lights. If I scroll down, we can see we've got a trial balance lead schedule. I'm going to use this as an example. Now, when you open up the lead schedule as default within the, so again, this is the Mercian methodology that we're using today, but it's going to be the same across the lead schedule structures, whether you're using HAT, Kestrian, or PCAS. What you're going to find is that you'll get a list of all the codes that are included within this file, and then you'll get that abbreviation that we mentioned previously when I was in the consolidation dropdown. Within that consolidation tree, I said put a abbreviation in, and then you'll get the account numbers and the figures. Now, to make this view a little bit easier to see, you can create a consolidated lead schedule. If I right click and go to properties, you're going to see you've got the option here for a consolidated view. Simply selecting consolidated view and clicking OK, you'll see that now what you'll get is the account numbers on a single column, and then you'll get separate columns for each of the subsidiaries. So AHL for ABC Holdings Limited, AEL for ABC Exhibitions Limited, and so on and so forth. There are further changes you can make within this screen. So you can have, if you want to include some subtotals, you can go to account balances with group subtotals. If you want to change the grouping, you can group it by your lead schedule referencing structure or by mapping as well. So if I change the grouping to map numbers, I change the format to account balances with group subtotals. Again, all accessible from the properties by right clicking. We click OK, and you can see, so you can tailor these views to show just the right information that you guys want to see, but also making it a little bit easier to distinguish between the different entities. And again, if anyone wants any more information on lead schedules, please feel free to drop something in the chat feature. Now at this stage, we're going to jump into the financial statements to have a look at the group and company figures and how we can distinguish between whether we're pulling in the group information into a note or whether we're pulling in the parent figures into a note. Now, before we do that, again, just as a recap with regards to the wizard, just so you guys again get an understanding of the initial setup of the file when we're creating a group set of accounts. Again, these are top tips, things to look out for, things to remember. And within the wizard, we just want to make sure that if we're ever creating a consolidated set of accounts, that we go to this, when we're doing the initial start and the initial engagement setup, that we do select member of a group as yes, that our category is, it can be parent or it could be a subsidiary with its own subsidiaries. And we then select consolidated group accounts. Obviously, if we leave it as a single entity, it's going to pull everything through as if it was a single entity. Other things to consider when we go into general information with our breakdown of the employees, we have a separate section for the group employees and for the parent employees. And also when we go into the directors, the parent company, directors' benefits will pull through, but we'll need to manually insert the subsidiaries. Again, if anyone wants any information on specific areas of the wizard in relation to their group sets, then please feel free to again drop something in the chat. I can see we've got some questions coming through, so hopefully my colleagues, if they aren't collating them for the end, are getting back to you guys. If there's anything specific, as we've mentioned, then please feel free to drop in there. We'll come back to you after the webinar if there's anything anyone wants to specifically look at. Now, in terms of, again, going back to those group and company figures, looking at the debtors note, we're going to use the debtors note as the example. Caseware has formulas within these rows to ensure that we're only pulling the parent figures into the company columns. Now, this is an FRS 102 file, but again, this will apply to, or the layout may be slightly different for a IFRS entity or for a charity entity. But again, the fundamentals, what we're discussing here regarding pulling the information in, is exactly the same. If I go to the table tab on the toolbar, what we'll see is that this row, or we'll use due within 1 year for this example, just because it's more relevant. A lot more people have debtors due within within 1 year, than within more than 1 year or after more than 1 year. If I go to the row configuration button on this screen, what we're going to see is that by default, the figures are coming from a custom calculation. Now, what that tells us is that we are pulling this information from a combination of map codes. But if I go to the cell calculation button, I'll be able to see the difference in that calculation between the group information, which is these first two rows here, and the parent company information. Now, the map codes that they're picking up are exactly the same. We can see it's picking up CO2, O1, question mark, O, and then question mark. The same for the parent. The difference is this first part of the calculation, PAR colon BR. Now, what that is telling us is that it's picking up specifically the parent balances. So for any custom notes that you're building, any note builder notes, any custom cells that you're creating within the financial statements, just to pull through the parent balance, it's important that we include this PAR colon BR colon, and then could be CY for current year, or it could be YR0 for current year, YR1 for prior year. But it's important that PAR colon BR section is included within your calculations. Just to give you an idea, if I was just to take that out quickly, and if I did it also for the second part of the calculation, you're going to see the figure is pulling for exactly the same as the group figure. So again, just to give you an idea of that the vital part is that PAR colon BR section. Now, the final section in terms of the accounts that we're just going to look at, again, a top tip for those of you that do detailed financial statements, so detailed profit and loss account at the bottom. By default, in a consolidated set, that will be a company detailed profit and loss account, but you do have the option within the question mark icon just to switch that to a consolidated group detailed profit and loss account. So that will adjust it. I'll select it. It will take a moment to load through, but instead of having, again, within the detailed notes, just to break down the parent figures, this will now show us a breakdown of the entire group's figures. So if I want to go through, and if I scroll down, I want to see a breakdown of how the cost of sales are calculating. I want to see how the administrative expenses are showing. Again, I can show a breakdown of either just the company, which is the default, or the entire group. Again, any questions on the detailed profit and loss account, or in terms of group and company figures, especially around custom notes, then again, please feel free to drop something in either the chat or the Q&A field. The final thing just to discuss, again, the final thing just to discuss is the year-end close process. Again, just to reaffirm the process that we should follow when we're going through and conducting a year-end close. If I go into the consolidated window, just to show you the entities, when we run a year-end close, it's vitally important that we run the year-end close on any subsidiary caseware files first. So in this instance, I would need to run the year-end close on ABC Exhibitions Limited before I ran the year-end close on ABC Holdings Limited. Now, the reason for that is when you run that year-end close, it breaks the link between the parent and the subsidiary file. So we would need to go back into, if I rolled forward this ABC Holdings Limited file, once I've rolled it forward, I would need to go back into the file and relink it to so this year end is 2021. So for 2022, I'd need to relink it to the ABC Exhibitions Limited 2022 file. So that, again, I'm pulling through the latest data. Now, the reason why we would need to roll forward the subsidiary first is just simply to make sure that it is going to be picking up the new data rather than linking it. Because if we accidentally link it to the 2021 file, we're just going to be pulling through the 2021 data into 2022, which obviously isn't going to be correct when it comes through to creating your financial statements. So for year-end close, we roll forward the subsidiary caseware files, then we roll forward the parent caseware file. That will also roll forward ABC Promotions and in this file ABC Marketing Limited, because they are all included within the same caseware file. So we'd only in this case have to do 2 roll forwards, one for Exhibitions, one for Holdings. But again, you'd need to roll forward Exhibitions Limited anyway at some point to be able to do the accounts for that individual entity. Now we've got a few minutes left. So what I'll want to do, I know there's been a few questions come in, so I will pass you back to James for any questions that you guys have got. I can't hear you at the moment, James.
There we go. Perfect. All good now?
Yep.
Wonderful. Yes, we've had a couple of questions in. Yeah, like you said, I don't know if we'll be able to cover all of them today, but we'll get started. First question is the roll forward of a prior year console file the same process as a regular file, or is there any differences that they should be made aware of?
The roll forward process.
Yes, yeah.
So you roll forward the parent and the subsidiary files in exactly the same way as you would a single entity file. The only difference is that linking process. So you would need to go back in and link your subsidiaries back into the parent file afterwards, but no difference in terms of the options that you select. Just quickly, for those of you, again, it's still the case of going to engagement, selecting year-end close, and rolling forward the file in the same manner as you would any other file.
Perfect. The next question is there any way to import the subsidiaries directly from the cloud?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I believe
we'll double check on that one, and then we'll come
you would
back.
open them, wouldn't you? Yeah, you'd get them from the cloud to get your copy.
Yeah. You need the trial balance.
Yes, yeah.
Be able to do that.
Okay, the next one. When we're doing a second year of consolidated financials, would we copy the prior year consolidation caseware file and reconnect to the current year caseware files, or would we copy the prior year parent and then consolidate from there? Then they said if it's the second option, how would the prior year consolidated journals then pull through?
When we're doing the second year consolidated financials, would we copy the prior year consolidated caseware file and reconnect to the current year caseware file, or would we copy the prior year parent and then consolidate from there? If you're doing the second year of the consolidated financials, you would, so in the first year, you would do the consolidation to pull the current and prior year data into the parent file, and then you would just run a year-end close on both files and then reconsolidate to pull what would then be the new current year into the parent file. Again, I'll catch up afterwards about that question because it's quite wordy.
Yes, yeah.
Just to try and make sure we're answering what you're asking.
Perfect. I'm just cautious of time, so what we'll do is we'll pop the rest of the queries. There's quite a few more coming in anyway. We'll pop the rest of them on the handout and the answers to those as well, so they'll be made accessible on the knowledge base shortly after today's webinar. If we just go through the closeout process from now on, Phil?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, just to close out for today, just a quick reminder of any upcoming webinars that you might want to attend. We're all the way up until the 5th of May at the moment, and we're scheduling more at the moment as well. To check them out, jump onto our Caseware website, caseware.co.uk/events, and you can register from there. And you can watch all the past webinars through either the KB or our YouTube channel. We've got a webinar playlist on the YouTube channel there. If you just jump onto the next screen for me, Phil. Perfect. And yeah, so for today's competition, we will be selecting a winner, and it will be made live in the next week or so, I believe, and we'll be doing a LinkedIn post as well to make everyone aware of who's won that. So we'll be in contact with one of the lucky winners after today. Next slide on there, Phil. Perfect. Wonderful. So yeah, just a quick reminder that this is the Caseware events page, and that's how you would find it under the resources tab. And another reminder that we have a client services LinkedIn page. This is more primarily focused at the kind of education and media side of things, with posts in regards to reminders for upcoming webinars and past webinars that you might find useful. In addition to having our Caseware YouTube channel as well, which you can subscribe to. That's a repository for all of our quick vids and previous webinars as well. So it's quite a useful resource there. And finally, just another reminder that we have the Caseware knowledge base. That's where you'll find this recording as well, and also to use the features available there to search for any issues you have. Perfect. So just to close out for today, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.